Welcome back to the Unapologetic Midlife Podcast. I'm your host, Mindi Lobuzzetta, trauma therapist, podcast host, and someone who is deeply passionate about helping you navigate midlife with clarity, confidence, and truth. This is the space where we have real conversations about what it actually looks like to move through this phase of life, whether that's perimenopause, identity shifts, healing old patterns, or finding your way back to yourself. Today's episode is about something that sounds simple, but is actually incredibly complex. Taking a chance, not from a place of impulsivity, but from a place of self-trust, because so many of us have been taught to follow expectations instead of listening to our own internal voice. And over time, that disconnect can leave you feeling stuck, uncertain, and disconnected from what you actually want. So today we're going deeper into what it really means to take a chance and why it feels so hard, and how learning to trust yourself might be the most important step forward. We're taught that taking a chance is risky, but what if the real risk is living a life that isn't yours? Playing it safe, following expectations, feeling disconnected despite doing everything right. Taking a chance. We hear that phrase all the time, like it's impulsive. And maybe it's too risky. Maybe it's even irresponsible. But what if taking a chance isn't about being reckless? What if it's actually one of the most grounded, regulated decisions you can make? Because here's the truth. Most people aren't stuck because they're incapable. They're stuck because they don't trust themselves. You heard me correctly. They're stuck because they don't trust themselves. They've been taught to look outside of themselves for answers. It's what's expected, what's safe, what looks right on paper. And somewhere along the way, they stopped listening to their own voice. We look everywhere, but within ourselves, for these answers. From a very early age, we're conditioned. We're taught what success should look like, what paths are acceptable, how to behave, speak, achieve. And for many people, especially women in midlife, that conditioning runs deep because it's not just societal expectations, it's also about survival. And if you grew up in an environment where love was conditional, emotions weren't safe, you had to perform, achieve, or stay small to belong, then you learned something pretty critical. I can't rely on myself, and I have to rely on external cues to stay safe. And that wiring doesn't just disappear. It shows up as second guessing yourself, overthinking every decision, feeling like you can't make a decision, needing validation before you act, feeling disconnected from what you actually want. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it was trained to do. It's choosing familiarity over authenticity. So let's clear something up, because this is where a lot of people get stuck. We tend to think, I just need more confidence, but confidence isn't the foundation. There are three distinct constructs here. There's self-esteem, which is how you feel about yourself. There's self-confidence, which is your ability to succeed at something. And self-trust, which is the belief that you will show up for yourself no matter what happens. And that last one, it's everything. Because you can lack confidence, feel uncertain, and be afraid and still take a chance if you trust yourself to handle the outcome. That's the shift. Taking a chance isn't about certainty. It's about capacity, the capacity to be willing to be uncomfortable while making a change, the capacity to believe in yourself enough and believe that you are worth it to take the chance and be okay with whatever outcomes will be. There's actually research that speaks directly to this. It's called the Adverse Childhood Experiences. It's a 10-item questionnaire measuring trauma before age 18. So there's a body of research, and it shows that the more adverse experiences someone has in childhood, things like abuse, neglect, household dysfunction, which includes divorce, incarcerated parent or parents, domestic violence towards the mother. And if you score 4 or more on this 10-item questionnaire, they are considered high risk, and more likely they are to experience as challenges later in life. Those challenges include mental health struggles, chronic illness like cancer or autoimmune diseases, substance use or dependence, difficulty with relationships. So On paper, it can look like your past determines your future, like there's a trajectory you're supposed to follow because of the awful things that you've experienced. But here's where things get missed. That ACE, adverse childhood experiences, are predictive, but not deterministic. They tell us what you've been exposed to. They do not define, however, what you're capable of becoming. And yet, so many people internalize their past as proof of limitation. This is where it gets really interesting, because if ACEs were destiny, we wouldn't see people rise from incredibly difficult backgrounds and build meaningful, successful, aligned lives. But we do every single day. I've literally seen it with my own eyes. I've watched people overcome extremely difficult circumstances and situations and build a beautiful, meaningful, successful life. So what's the difference? Resilience. And not the watered down version of resilience, not just pushing through or go be strong. True resilience is the ability to adapt. It's the ability to find meaning and the ability to rebuild identity after disruptions. Resilient individuals often develop a strong internal narrative. They may say to themselves, I am not what happened to me. There's an internal locus of control. Emotional flexibility, which is your ability to handle whatever you're feeling without getting stuck in it or trying to shut down. It's being able to recognize your emotions, allow them to be there, and still choose how you respond, especially in challenging or difficult situations. Instead of avoiding or fighting your feelings, you move through them and adapt in a way that actually supports you. There's a willingness to feel discomfort without shutting down. And that's a big one. At some point, whether consciously or not, they make a decision. They might say, I am going to believe in myself, even if no one else ever did. And this is where self-trust begins. So here's where people get tripped up, because fear rarely shows up as I'm scared. It sounds like it's not the right time. I need to be more prepared. What if it doesn't work? I can't afford to fail. And all those thoughts feel rational. You're telling yourself these things and you're rationalizing them. But underneath them is something deeper. There's fear of judgment. There's fear of rejection. There's fear of failure. And sometimes fear of success. Yes, some people, they do. They fear being successful. And identity change feels unsafe to the nervous system. So instead, we stay where we are. Not because it's good, but because it's familiar. Let's ground this, because taking a chance is often misunderstood. It's not always quitting your job overnight, making a massive life-altering decision. Sometimes it's much quieter than that. Taking a chance can look like saying what you actually think, setting a boundary for the first time, pursuing something that matters to you, even if you're not ready, making a decision based on your values, not other people's expectations. It's not about the size of the leap. It's about the alignment of the decision. We've been taught to fear risk, but let's reframe it. There are two kinds of risk. The risk of taking a chance, the risk of staying exactly where you are and going nowhere. And for most people, they only consider the first one. But the second, that's the quieter risk, the one where you stay stuck, you stay disconnected, you live a life that looks right, but doesn't feel right. So the question isn't, what if it doesn't work? The question is, what if I never try? Your past may explain your fear. It may explain why self-trust doesn't come easily, why taking a chance feels overwhelming, why your nervous system resists change, but it does not get to define your future. Taking a chance isn't about being fearless. It's about deciding that your voice, your needs, and your intuition matter more than your fear. And that's where everything changes. If this episode resonated with you, I want you to ask yourself one question today. Where in my life am I waiting for permission that I actually need to give myself? That's your starting point. Podcast disclaimer. Just a quick reminder. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical or mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. While I am a licensed mental health professional, this content is not therapy and does not establish a therapeutic relationship. If you're struggling or need support, I always encourage you to reach out to your own licensed provider or a qualified health professional in your area. As always, please take a moment to like and subscribe to this podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, leave a review. Hope to see you soon.